Good morning. Today I'm going to show you a technique that I just learned that will allow you to weave your ends in as you crocheting. You're actually going to crochet those tails in instead of having a lot of tails at the end of your project. When you finish those tails that you have to weave into the back, you're basically going to weave them in while you're crocheting. So this sample piece I'm going to add, I've done 5 rows of 30 red stitches, so on this row I'm going to add red. No, I already have red, so I'm going to add white, and I'm going to pick up that new color, which is white, from underneath the old color, which is red. And then I'm going to pick up this first white stitch, and normally I would leave a tail about this long at the back of my project, but as I pick up these next stitches, I'm going to crochet that into the back. So when I pick up this first stitch, first I put the hook under that vertical stitch. So for the first stitch, I'm going to go underneath that loop, that tail in the back, to pick up my loop. I'm going to go underneath that tail. Then the next stitch, I'm going to go over that tail. Then I'm just going to alternate between going underneath that tail, and I pick up each stitch, and then going over that tail, underneath the tail, over the tail. And as you can see in the back, instead of having that, this is the tail the portion of the tail that I haven't crocheted over yet, but the part that I have crocheted over, as you can see, is woven into the back. And just continue. If I have many white stitches, go under the tail. Then the next stitch you go over the tail. Under the tail. And I'll say with this stitch, when I go over this last piece of the tail, that should be about enough, because after that there's only going to be a very small little piece left. And then when I'm done, that little piece of a tail, I'll probably clip that even closer. And I'm going to add another color. I'm going to add purple for this little demonstration. Pick up that new color from underneath the old color. So I'm going to go with that purple, leaving about that much of a tail, just like I did with the white, and doing the same thing. I'll begin going underneath the tail, then over the tail, underneath the tail, pick up my loop, then I go over the tail, pick up my loop, underneath the tail, over the tail, underneath, and over. Now, my personal preference when I do my projects, normally at the end when I weave those tails in, I'll do it for about 5 or 6 stitches, and that's plenty enough for me. And I always weave I used to always weave my tails in, and afterwards I always put it in the washing machine. I've never had a problem with my tails coming undone. If one little piece comes out of one stitch, it's still enough woven in that, the afghan is not going to unravel. That's never a problem. But I do that for about 5 or 6 stitches. But however much of a tail that you want to leave, if you want to leave enough to weave in for 10 stitches, 20 stitches, just whatever you feel comfortable with. But that little amount of tail that I left in that demonstration I just showed you, that's about enough for me. But you can make your tail as long as you want to. And just weave it in for however many stitches it takes to weave that tail in. And as you can see when you look on the back, you don't have those long tails hanging in the back. You know, you just got that little tiny piece. And, you know, after I've done a few more rows or crochet some more, I'll even trim that down maybe a little bit shorter. And for this next row, you know, whatever project you're doing, you're going to follow your pattern, of course. But for this one, you're going to just, let's say that I'm going to pick up white in this next stitch. So when I pick up that white from underneath my red, then in the back I'm going to have this long loop. So to avoid having that, you're just going to continue the same way I wove in the tail on the last row. With your first stitch, you go underneath that loop to pick up your first stitch. Then that next stitch, you go over that loop. Next stitch, you go under the loop. Then the next one, you go over. Then under and over. And then as you can see, when you look on the back, you don't have that loop. It's all just woven in or stitched in. Just pretty much looks just like the back of your Tunisian stitch. Then you don't have that loop. And for this one, I'm gonna say I'll just continue with the white. But of course, whatever you're making, you're just gonna follow your pattern. But for this next one, the next color change, let's say that instead of picking the purple up right here, let's say we're going to go a few white stitches on top of these purple. So if I do about 5 or 6 white stitches on top of that purple, and then I don't pick up the purple until I get to about right here, then that's going to leave me, when I bring that purple over to start picking it up over here, that's going to leave a loop in the back. So we don't want to do that. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just weave that in as you're picking up these white stitches. So when I go to pick up this first white stitch on top of this purple, I'll go underneath that purple tail or loop in the back. First I'll go under it. Next stitch I'll go over it. Next stitch I'll go under it. And the next stitch I'll go over. And then just alternate under and then over. You know, of course we are just following whatever pattern. And then you won't have that loop. You have that woven in for you. Then we'll finish it off with the purple, just for this demonstration. And then of course we're just going to work our loops off on our return pass. And just like on the forward pass, we're going to pick up our new color from underneath our old color. Now on this next row, I'm going to show you what I'll do if I have maybe 2 tails at a time. I just weave them in just like when I have 1 tail at a time. I'll just show you an example. Let's say I'll do these 4 red stitches. And let's say the pattern says, calls for no more white. So that means I'm gonna cut the white off. I'm done with the white, so I'm gonna cut off this white, but I'm gonna leave a little tail. So finish with the white. I don't need that anymore. So I'm gonna leave about that much of a tail. And of course, I don't want to leave that tail hanging, so I'm just gonna weave it in. You know, go under that white tail in the back, then go over the white tail, then under the white tail, over the white tail. And let's say the pattern calls for me to add another color. So let's add some pink. The end of my pink. Okay, so I'm going to pick this pink up from underneath my red, my new color, from underneath my old color. I'm going to pick up that pink and leave however much of a tail you want to leave. I'll say about this much, about that much of a tail. And I'm going to weave that in just like I demonstrated already. But let's say, you know, I still have a little bit of a white tail, and I still want to weave the rest of that in also. So, okay, let me get it together. Okay, that's my pink tail. And then I still have my white tail. So I'm going to put those together. Of course, I'm working with the pink. So, first I'll go, well, for right now I'll go over that, over those tails. That next stitch I'm going to stitch over the tail, over those tails, the white and the pink tail. And next stitch I'll go under that tail to pick up that pink stitch. Then this one, this stitch, I'm going to go over the 2 tails, the white and the pink tail. Next stitch I'll go under the white and the pink tail. Next stitch I'll go over. And then of course, you know, you're just following your pattern for however many stitches of whatever color you're supposed to be using. Then I'm going to go under those tails, pick up that stitch, and the next stitch I'm going to go over those tails. Now, if you look in the back, that's the last bit of the white tail. You know, the white tail is already woven in. Only that little tiny piece left. But as you can see, I still have a little bit more of a pink tail. But I've already woven in the pink tail for this amount of distance. If I want to continue to weave the pink tail in some more, I can. But for me, maybe that's enough for you. For me, it is. I would just snip that right there. But if your pattern calls for you to continue with the pink, or maybe add another color, or maybe bring the purple over the color you already used already, you know, just following the pattern, whatever you have in the back, be it a loop or a tail, you can just, you know, just weave it in, just like all the demonstration. Let's say this next stitch is going to be the purple. I'm going to pick up the purple. So I'm going to pick up this purple from underneath my pink. My old color is the pink and my new color is the purple. So I'm going to have that purple loop on the back. So, you know, I don't want that like that. Maybe I also still want to continue weaving in this pink tail. I might not want to cut that off. So we're going to continue. When I go to pick up this first purple stitch, I'm going to go underneath the purple loop and the pink tail for that first purple stitch. In the next one, I'm going to go over the purple loop and the pink tail. Next stitch I'll go under both of them, just like I would do for one. The next stitch I'll go over. Next stitch I'll go under. Now that pink, that's For me, I think that's definitely enough. But just in case you want to continue, you know, just whatever your preference is, however long you want to, however far you want to weave it in. And that's pretty much done. Now, I still have a little bit of a purple loop back there. I can go under that. Then I'll go over it. And then when you look on the back, you see all that is woven in. You know, that's your yarn you're still working with. Your purple, your red, your purple, your pink. But these little, what's left over from the tails that you've woven in. And basically when you completed your whole project, all those tails have been woven in for you. And you don't have to waste 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours weaving in tails. I've done projects for large Afghans that have literally taken me like all day, almost the entire day, to weave the ends in, because there have been so many tails to weave in. I mean, 4, 5, 6 hours at least. You know, depending on the how big the Afghan is, how many color changes, how many tails I have to weave in. It can be very time consuming. But with this, I love it, because no matter what the pattern calls for, if I'm adding a stitch, if I'm moving if I'm adding a new color, if I'm moving a color from the left to the right, from the right to the left, if I'm taking a color out, whatever is in the back, that tail, that loop, can all just get woven in as I'm crocheting it, and I don't have all those tails at the end of the project. I'm very excited about it. I'm very happy, and I hope you find it as useful as I have. Thank you.